Our fourth story now. Fresh protests in Spain, this time not for jobs, but to demand an end to the country's monarchy. Thousands took to the streets across dozens of cities to call for a referendum on the abolition of Spain's monarchy. The rally came after 76-year-old King Juan Carlos announced his abdication in favour of his son. Dozens of left-wing political parties and civil groups came together to demand a referendum on the issue. Crown Prince Felipe is due to officially replace his father, probably on June 19th. A loss of public faith in Spain's institutions because of the economic crisis, combined with a spate of scandals over the past 3 years, has led to a dramatic drop in the monarchy's popularity. Let's go to New York and talk to Ian Williams with Foreign Policy in Focus. Welcome, sir. Mr. Williams, just how popular is the monarchy in Spain?
Well, I'm not sure the monarchy itself is very popular, but Juan Carlos did get a lot of prestige when he replaced the fascist dictator Franco, and also when he faced down the attempted military coup shortly afterwards. So he's been coasting along with some sort of personal prestige, but whether it seems that that prestige does not necessarily attach to the monarchy as a general principle, since there's obviously a lot of discontent with the idea of the Crown Prince and the rest of it. So we might be seeing the end of the dynasty here. With the recent vicissitudes of the Spanish economy, then there's much less respect for institutions, and the monarchy is a sort of relatively recently reinvented institution in Spain. It was abolished almost a century ago and was resurrected in a sort of shadow faction by Franco, who was a fascist dictator. Luckily, the abdicating King Juan Carlos, when he took over, was actually sort of seen as considerably more progressive and popular than the fascist whom he replaced.
And of course, what is the scale of the monarchy's costs that could otherwise be used for welfare programmes and productivity of the country?
You know, if it's anything like the British monarchy, it's not so much the costs of the institution itself, it's the social costs of having an institution that's a pinnacle of snobbery and class prejudice and you know, inherited primogeniture. They're saying that somebody is who they are simply because they're their father's son, and that's the real cost in these things. It's almost worth it for sort of advertising. People could make the case for the British monarchy that lots of tourists go and see those soldiers in red coats marching up and down outside the palace, but it's not a completely credible argument. But the relative costs aren't that high. It's the question of the influence of institutions which are based on this. I mean, journalists have been prosecuted for being disrespectful to the monarchy. And, you know, once an institution is above reproach like that, then you have an encroachment on democracy.
Indeed. And of course, at the end of the day, what is the likelihood of the monarchy becoming abolished?
It depends on the referendum and the governments. You know, there's obviously Spain has been a split society for quite a long time. The scars of the Civil War are still there, and there's still bodies being found, and the history has been suppressed of the Spanish Civil War. So this is something that the monarchy, almost under Juan Carlos, acted as a sort of unifying feature. I rather think that his somewhat less charismatic heir and successor will not fulfill that role, and those divisions in society will be coming out more openly, especially with the economic crisis, which is bound to be reflected in a political crisis, of course.
And of course, very briefly, the fact that if a referendum is held and the monarchy is abolished, will members of the monarchy become subject to the law of the land in cases of corruption, for example?
Well, they still are, technically. I mean, you know, we have many European precedents for monarchs who have been subject to the rule of law, from Charles I in England to Louis XIV Louis XVII in Spain, in France. Monarchs have suffered in the past, and you cannot have anybody or institution above with impunity if you're going to have a democratic society. That's one of the very basic rules.
Oh, and is that the case in Britain?
They could still be prosecuted. I mean, in Britain they have executed kings in the past, and that they still have far too much impunity, but it's not an absolute impunity. And the question is whether it's matched with any degree of responsibility. No, the people can make an argument. Anyone who's seen the American presidential system in operation might think that it's preferable to have a figurehead head of state without political influence to having an elected president who is functionally an 18th century British monarch elected for 4 years. But on the other hand, it is this whole pinnacle of snobbery and class prejudice that the monarchy stands atop of, especially the British monarchy. The Spanish monarchy to some degree, but is reflected because of the divisions, once again, of the Spanish Civil War, which was essentially monarchists versus republicans.
Indeed. Well, we'll leave it there for the time. Many thanks to Ian Williams with Foreign Policy in Focus from New York. Thanks for your thoughts there, sir.